When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We're going to be talking about the state of the Wolverines, the defending national champions, here with Andrew and Jared from Maize and Brew. Before I introduce them, make sure to follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to leave reviews, big10footballtalk@gmail.com if you want to send me emails. And, of course, follow us on X as well. But without further ado, we're here with Andrew and Jared, or Jay Storm, as he is known on, and it's displayed on his virtual placard here. Guys, how you doing?
Outstanding.
Good to be here, man. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
For sure. It is, I think one of my favorite discussions I've had, and everybody knows I'm a Buckeye, but when we crossed aisles a couple months ago after the spring game with on the Big Ten Huddle with JR, is one of my favorite conversations, and it proved Buckeyes and Wolverines can be friends. I think
it was mutual, man, and I completely agree. Some of my best friends on this planet, who I have deep disagreements with, but fine humans.
Yes, same, man. Jared and I were buzzing about that for a week. Had a great time, and we're looking forward to come back.
Yeah, well, this time we'll anchor right with the Wolverines. But before we do that, you guys have been podcasting for a while, part of a different network. So I'd love to know kind of where we can find you, but two, how did you even get involved into being podcasters for Maize and Brew?
So you can find our written work, and all of our podcasts will be published socially according to maizenbrew.com. We're a part of the Fan First Sports Network now. They're not associated, but one just kind of works hand in hand with the other. We've been podcasting for 7 years come August. And
wow.
We joined, we both joined Maize and Brew in 2017, 2016. And we were doing something then called Going for Two, where we would work collaboratively together on like a writing piece, basically like a written podcast. And we'd go back and forth on that. And Jared and I were both kind of getting into podcasts independently at that time. And we were like, dude, you want to do a podcast together? Like, had no idea, didn't know each other at all, like had no other interaction besides just some written words back and forth. Like, yeah, let's do a podcast. And we started in 2017 in August. I remember a few weeks before the Michigan-Florida game. And we've been potting pretty much weekly ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. He dropped like one reference to The Mummy, the 1999 classic, and I was like, yeah, that's my guy. I was like, get us a podcast. We're ready.
That low key is a great film, by the way.
Oh, it's a banger.
High key.
Absolute classic. Like I'm getting married next month. I compare my wife to Evie in that. Like, if you're not to this level, we can't do it. Like, it had to be there.
It'll be mentioned in the scripture as I wed them. Like, we're gonna at least reference the 1999 classic, The Mummy, once.
There you go. Benny, I really appreciate Benny in that movie and just how ridiculous he is.
Tremendous. Yeah.
Go the wrong side of the river.
Yes. Such a good moment.
So long as we are national champions, we are immune.
Well done. Well done. All right. I think we can end the podcast there. We don't need to forget Michigan. There's
the peak right there.
Chris 4 minutes.
There we go. we were talking beforehand. We like to keep our podcasts, our movies quick in and out. So I think we accomplished it. No, we're gonna get more on Yankee Wolverine, who's one of our main listeners. He's waiting for this episode. And if we ended there, he might like unsubscribe and like send the no, he wouldn't do that.
That's our familiar with Yankee. He's a listener of ours.
He's the man.
Yeah,
I love him so
awesome.
much.
Yeah. Shout out.
Well, so we'll get to the Wolverine program now. You guys are in deep, having podcasted for 7 years. You guys really got to see kind of the midpoint of the Jim Harbaugh era. And I was telling you guys off the air pre-show, I think there is this perception about Jim Harbaugh that he didn't really get great till 2021. And I will fight anybody who says that, because I think what he did before that was really great. But I want you guys to talk about two things. One, what did you see pre-COVID that Harbaugh did to elevate the program? And then how did he continue that post-COVID? Because I think COVID seemed like that dip, right? 2 and 4. Seemed like everything kind of went by the wayside. How did he elevate the program from 2015 to 2019? And then how did he continue that progress post-COVID?
So a lot to unpack there. So I would say, talking about pre-COVID, the first thing Jim Harbaugh did in 2015 was reinstill a sense of belief, pride, and the culture he was looking to establish initially. So it was a return, like just getting away from the Brady Hoke era, the way that disastrously ended and everything that happened with that regime, and to what he did like through 15, 16, 17, and 18. It was Harbaugh's mentality. Like it was, I mean, you had 3 10-win seasons there. You had the bad year being 8-5 in the middle, but it was just like, it felt like Michigan was back. But also like Michigan was back to 9, 10 wins, which was an improvement, but he started searching for more in the wrong way. So like in 2019, hires a new offensive coordinator, kind of just ignores the fact that the defense is going stale. Hence the, was it 63-39 beat down by Ohio State against Michigan in 2018. That's an aside that Harbaugh's overcommitment to assistant coaches at that time was one of his downfalls, like happened offensively with Tim Drevno, then defensively with Don Brown. But in 2019, like he tried to reinvent himself, tried to get ahead of everybody. Like what he was doing was running stale. Like I got to freshen it up. I got to do this. And he tried the wrong thing. He put the belief in the wrong thing. He got away from his core tenets, his core principles. And you saw that in 2019 with an up and down kind of season. And then I think it all just came to a head in 2020. And without that year, the magnifying glass wouldn't have been put on the problems that they could resolve and build upon post-COVID.
Well said by Andy there. He's our resident historian. So whenever we're talking about like the change of the guard, I always lean on him. But he nailed the key points there. Like he brought in Tim Drevno initially when he came to Michigan, and that pretty much signified what he wanted to do there, which was a continuation of what he did at San Francisco and at Stanford. I mean, he wants and continues to want this to be an offense built around the offensive line and the running game and quality quarterback play. Obviously, there was the Andrew Luck thing at Stanford where he kind of just lucked, pardon the unintentional pun there, into an incredible elite quarterback. But for the most part, like you can be just a solid quarterback in a Jim Harbaugh system and take control of the ball. And that's what he wanted. Went away from that with Pep Hamilton in 2019. But then COVID happens, almost gets fired, and you see dramatic changes there. And he's like, if I'm going out on my terms. He went back to exactly what Jim Harbaugh had always been. But the key thing that happened, bigger than anything else that happened around then, was the installation of the Baltimore Ravens defense. There's now an infamous phone call where he called his brother and was like, I mean, had a heart-to-heart about it. I'm about to get fired at Michigan, my dream job. What do we do here? I need your defense. And obviously that story's been written now, and now we have this kind of installation of the Baltimore Ravens defense and continuing with Wink Martindale. So just going back from McDaniel, Minter, and now Martindale, where we've installed this defense that has really, really turned the tide. So I think that was probably the other biggest thing, other than what Andy mentioned.
In 2020, just for reference, how far away we lost the plot at Michigan. It was the only year in the Jim Harbaugh era that per game Michigan was throwing the ball more than running it, with Josh Gaddis at the helm. So that was a big difference. And just philosophically and schematically, both sides of the ball got a complete overhaul after that season. Jared alluded to and talked about the defense and what happened there, but offensively, the team promoted Sherrone Moore to co-OC, and his smash identity really took hold, almost like a Harbaugh incarnate. Like he needed Sherrone Moore to come and like wake up what was inside of him. And Michigan realized that in order to get ahead, they needed to return to the past and get back to running the football, because as smaller hybrid linebackers and safeties had inundated the game, the best way to exploit this trend was to run the damn ball. And after working at Michigan since 2018 and serving as a prime catalyst for like everything going 2020 is why I feel so good about what Sherrone Moore is building for this year and the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate your perspective, even on both the schematic changes on defense, but also really the commitment to toughness and running the ball. Because if you look at how Ohio State, as a foil, where they've struggled has been up front and running the ball. And I think that's what Michigan, like you're talking about exploiting those hybrid players. I think Ohio State's starting to get back some of that physical identity, but I think that's one of the things that we've been frustrated as Buckeye fans is like, why are we getting pounded? And it's because you guys have really embraced that again. And I think that's the scariest thing about this fall for us is like, we're saying we're embracing it, but I don't know if we've really embraced it like you guys have. So you mentioned Sherrone Moore, and I'm curious how you think he can keep the ship going. Obviously you have, just from what you were just saying, you guys have extreme confidence in him. Jared, why don't we go to you? How do you see Sherrone Moore continuing the ship going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like a situation where you've got the quarterback that was really in the great system under a great coach, and then the older quarterback, he's got the vet in front of him, and that vet retires. Like Sherrone Moore has been in there. He just witnessed a lot of winning, and he got an advantage that I can't recall any other coach in waiting getting, where he literally got to play against some of his biggest rivals. Like he was the coach. And it wasn't like any sort of, just like Statue of Liberty, just fake position. He was legitimately the coach against Ohio State, against Penn State. And we saw what he was able to do. So getting that, like getting your feet wet instantly in the Big Ten, learning under Jim Harbaugh, being the coach in waiting, being groomed. I think he's a dramatically different coach, like just stylistically, you listen to his interviews and stuff like that. I don't think that it's going to be a direct like 1-to-1 when you compare the Sherrone Moore era to the Harbaugh era. But I think that the important things, the things like that are based around like the strength and conditioning program, in the way that we run our practices and how physical they are, in the way that we recruit, in the sense that we're okay not throwing a giant bag at someone. We want someone that's going to be here for 4 years. That's a little bit more important to us. And that's not like an Ohio State dig. That's just like, I think that's what Michigan is committed to, is like, it's more important that we get our hands on the right guys, get them into our program, bring them up the right way. And I think that Sherrone Moore will commit to those things whilst being a little bit more of maybe a player's coach, is kind of the impression that I'm getting right there. I can't sit here and say it will be as great as the Jim Harbaugh era. We just don't have enough data for that right now. But the reasons to be encouraged are the wins against, already on his record, he will be credited with those wins, and the just the philosophy, the way it embodies what Michigan wants to do. I mean, we have now kind of started to put into the Michigan lore the 32 runs versus Penn State. Like that's become part of the lore now. And it's something that we're like, at the time, Andy and I, when we podcast, we're about like, interesting choice. But now I think we're just like, we hang our hats on it. So like we're excited about it.
The 32 runs is so impressive to me because that's a battlefield decision. You can talk about being a good game planner and all this, and that was very unprecedented because Harbaugh gets suspended mid-flight. Then there's all the back and forth. Is he going to coach? Is he not going to coach? Sherrone Moore doesn't know what's really going on, what's going to happen. So he has to serve as head coach, OC, lead play caller, offensive line coach, all of that on just the drop of a hat. And then just to have the audacity to be like, okay, Chop Robinson is destroying our right tackle right now. It is loud in here. We're not getting the ball off. We need to run the ball, and we're going to keep doing it and keep doing it. I was blown away. Like he was coaching just to win the game, not like he was going to lose the game, not like it was his first time doing it. Just making the right battlefield decisions is so tough to do. And the other reason I'm very optimistic about it is he was there before the change and he was there after the change. He's been with the Michigan program since 2018 and he's there now. So he's seen the culture go from good to bad to worse and then slowly build each year. So he understands what it takes to not only instill a good culture, but to sustain that over multiple years.
Yeah. Well, and I'd asked you this question in prep, but in your minds, is Sherrone Moore the right guy? It sounds like unequivocally,
absolutely.
Yes.
Unequivocally.
Yeah. I wrote one thing and Andy and I just went back and revisited the 2015 coaching search. Some of the names that we were talking about in 2015 for this team are I think right now they're Geico rental agents. Like these people are not even working in college football. Like one of them changed my tire the other day. It was like Todd Graham, Kevin Sumlin, Tom Herman. Like Les Miles is probably the best of the names that we had on there other than Harbaugh. So these coaching searches, you might think the grass is greener on the other side, but it is usually not. And there was nobody out there other than Sherrone Moore we wanted.
And not to mention, you run the risk of losing so many guys internally to the transfer portal. That was the biggest concern, especially on defense and especially with some of the high-end talent that Michigan has. Sherrone Moore is so beloved within the program. And if you hire just somebody externally and they're like, oh, hey, Brian Kelly's coming. It's like, oh man, can't wait to start back at zero. So I think it was just imperative to keep him and just keep the train going on the tracks.
Yeah. So you have continuity.
Yeah.
And I think with that, and I really appreciate the points that you guys are making about culture. And I think that in some instances that can be overblown, but I think in Michigan's case, it is underblown. I don't think we talk about it enough because you guys have a real feel for the type of guys you want on this team. And I think, I speak for Ohio State guys. I think for a while we were like, that, they have another low 4-star guy that they're going to develop. And then it's like, oh my gosh, please stop. Just stop. I'm going to maybe deviate a little bit. This podcast is going to come out a couple weeks after we finish recording. As of right now, there's 8 recruits in the 2025 class. You guys just got a high-level quarterback in the 2026 class. And I think a lot of people in the Big Ten, Ohio State fans included, are like, Michigan's got nobody. They didn't get the national championship bump. Can you just help either temper expectations or help people understand what is building and brewing right now?
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Happy to. Yeah. This is something Andy and I brought up because while we don't always represent the entire fan base, we are fans and we're keeping an eye on this sort of stuff as fans. You would like to be historically in the top 10, actually top 7, I think is the we did a podcast about
12.
It like that. Oh, it was top 12. That's what it was. That historically no national champion has had less than a top 12 recruiting class contributing to that national champion team. So you need to have somewhere in the top 10. That has changed though so much with the transfer portal. So that's one aspect of it. Michigan remade their entire secondary in the transfer portal over a weekend. So many key contributors, I mean, that we've had on Joe Moore award-winning offensive lines, including like Olu Timmy and and players like that. I mean, last year Josh Wallace was the number 2 cornerback on a national championship team. We think that we've completely remade our secondary through the transfer portal. So that's just a huge piece of this. You can't worry as much about it anymore when like you just beat Ohio State, just beat Michigan out for a wide receiver. And it was like, man, that's a direct loss to Ohio State. I look at wide receivers as free agents. I was like, so many of these guys are going to change hands. So he might end up being a guy for Ohio State that really comes back to beat us. But like, it's a 40% chance. It's a 55% chance. Who knows? That's part of it. The other part of it is there's a coaching staff change, and they seem to be prioritizing the higher guys. If you take by just overall average, I think we're a top 6 recruiting team as far as average stars. So they're going after the guys that were still in the pipeline that were very key for them to get. And they're handling that, which I think if I were coming into a new staff, like taking over, I would want to kind of lean into that as well. Let's make sure we use our continuity to get the top rated guys. And the other part of this that Andy brought up the other day, which was such a great point, is that like, there's just a lot of teams that are ahead of us in the recruiting rankings that just have like 17 3-stars. We took 27 players last year. We are not taking a large class this year. It will probably be a 15 to 17 player class, and we will fill in with a lot of transfer portal guys. So in no way are we worried. Obviously, we'd rather be in Ohio State's position. I'm not going to sit here and just dismiss that and say it's not important. Like your recruiting class is better. But we're not worried about it, I would say. Like there's proof of concept that we can make this work.
No, Rutgers has the number 10 class right now because they have 22 3-stars committed. Like that's the way it's going to sway these things right now. And I just want to double down on the fact that it's June 19th. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. It's no time to panic. This time last year, I think Michigan had the number 2 class and ultimately finished up number 16 in the composite rankings. But Jared mentioned it, and I think it's such just a key point here with it is the transfer portal. Like the way Michigan's success rate has been in that last year, 17, excuse me. Michigan, I think, batted 100% in the transfer portal last year with Josh Wallace, James Turner, AJ Barner, Jack Tuttle, who could be our starting quarterback this season, Drake Nugent, Josiah Stewart, Miles Hinton, Ernest Hausman, Ladarius Henderson. All of them either started or played a ton of snaps. So it's like recruiting's still important. I think it's important to be in the top 20 now. Like it's kind of perspectives kind of changed with the portal. But at that portal hit rate, you feel good with them supplementing. And until I'm given a reason to worry otherwise about player development, I'm just not going to be in a position to panic.
Yeah. And one more thing, Zach, if I may, sorry to interrupt you there.
No,
but this
go for it.
We bring up on our podcast a lot that I don't think is just general knowledge. So I'd like to throw it out here. Recruiting rankings are not based on some sort of like composite where everybody that knows ball is getting together and agreeing on it. It's based on how many offers you have. So like Andy brought up on our podcast the other night, Justin Jefferson was a 2-star because nobody offered him. They knew he was going to LSU. And like, there's so many situations like that where people just don't get a ton of offers. So it's like, oh, he's a 3-star and you want to immediately laugh at him. And it's like, well, it's early in the cycle. Like nobody's seen this kid yet. Or like he's from Ohio, he's from Columbus and everyone knows he's going to Ohio State. Nobody offered him. Or like for a lot of the Michigan guys, they do the legwork and they go to places like Idaho to dig out Colston Loveland. It's like, who is this guy? Like no one's heard of this guy. If you do the legwork, you find a 3-star that in any other world is a 5-star.
That's a really good point. I think, every fan base can point to a low rated guy and like, how is he low rated? It's because no one saw him. It's not because he just immediately got better. I'm sure, there are probably stories like that too, but it's a lot of players. It's like, oh, he was just really good and nobody knew. Yeah, Khalil Mack. That's a really good example. Yeah. He's like a 2-star guy on the Bulls.
Nobody knew about Khalil Mack. Yeah. Everybody missed. Sauce Gardner was right in Michigan's backyard, and like we didn't get him. Went to Cincinnati. So like it happens.
Yeah. I'm just processing that hit rate that you talked about, Andy, and I'm just like, I can't believe, like, every player you mentioned, I'm like, had a significant part of that national championship run. That's insane.
That's the thing, man. It's mind blowing when you look back, and it's like they've like started adding more and more to each recruiting class, because it's like you can see these guys for 3 or 4 years. So you're really not projecting. You're just kind of like, okay, if we take him where he is now, put him in our system, what can he do? And like AJ Barner turned into an NFL product because of that year at Michigan. Like just completely changed his trajectory as a professional.
It's dramatic. I have some access to some high school coaches around here, and they were talking about this the other night. And like, I watch a lot of basketball. Like, would you rather have a random pick in the teens in the draft? Would you rather have like a proven free agent that you just watched shut down like an NFL wide receiver, an NFL caliber wide? It's no question. Every coach is going to take the proven commodity, whether it's basketball, whether it's football. Like, so yeah, the transfer portal is an incredibly powerful weapon. And I think that people don't really realize just how powerful it is.
I agree, but you can't build your entire program through
No, you
that.
cannot.
I agree with you.
I agree with you.
Recruiting is still the foundation, but
the foundation.
You can supplement through the portal.
Yeah, it's free agency. Yeah.
And Michigan, I feel like more than any other program has threaded the needle in that. I mean, I don't think anyone's done. It's Michigan and everybody else, in my opinion.
It's a great sentence.
No notes.
It's the only time I ever want to say that, but I'll say it here.
I mean, it's apt though, especially coming off a national championship, and you see the combination of youth returning this year with the transfers that came in last year, and that's why I think Jared and I are probably on average overly bullish about every transfer that comes in now. Like, we'll see their name come through. It's well, we know he's going to be a hit because they don't miss.
I know, like, and we should be high on it, but like, think about just the playoffs last year. Michael Penix was a transfer. Quinn Ewers was a transfer. There's a lot of the Georgia guys that are transfers. Xavier Worthy, was he a transfer? Did we actually have him?
He had a dorm at Michigan, but there's some murky stuff behind
there was some things that happened there, but
murky things.
Murky things happen. So like, it is just becoming like more commonplace. But yes, I also agree. There's Michigan and then everywhere else. I don't want to stomp on that statement because that was delightful.
That's fair. Well, and I think everybody's looking to Michigan as the model. I mean, again, Ohio State, I think they've been slow, to adopt the transfer portal. And then this year was, I think, the first year that they really exploded.
Yeah.
But like, I think they've, sadly, Michigan to thank, for many reasons, Michigan to thank. We want to stop losing to you guys. You were talking before about the staff prioritizing some higher rated guys. In general, what are your thoughts about the new staffers that have come in? I know you got obviously poached Tony Alford. Andy, why don't you take this one first?
I love the staff right now coming in. I mean, I don't have any reason to be one way or another. I mean, no reason to be overly excited, discouraged until games are played. But I really like the combination of youth and experience, because some guys have stayed within the program, like Kirk Campbell is now sole OC. He's also taking on play calling duties. Grant Newsome is going to be taking over the offensive line. But then you have the new additions like Wink Martindale, Lamar Morgan in the secondary. I'm really excited for as well. So no reason to be one way or another, but I'd say I'm at the minimum very, very encouraged.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. Like, it's impossible to be like all 10 toes down or anything, but it's also impossible to be completely out. It's a lot of unknown. There's some certain known commodities in there. Wink Martindale's got like quite a resume on him. That man's got a CV. And then like Kirk Campbell, I think, is a guy that we certainly trust. And then there's like up and comers, like you mentioned, like Brian Jean Mary and Grant Newsome and Ron Bellamy, that were like, okay, these guys, if nothing else, are good recruiters. The talk of those names, probably Grant Newsome, who was a guy that we were still podcasting when he played at Michigan. So like,
yep, I remember that name.
Yeah, which is crazy, like a really fast riser. So that's one I'm really excited about. Wink Martindale probably just kind of filling in for the year. I can't imagine he's part of this long term. But yeah, I mean, there were some early like hiccups too. I don't want to sit here and pretend like it's all been roses. There was 2 staffers dismissed for DUIs, early this summer. Denard Robinson and the defensive line coach who
Scruggs.
I decided not to commit to memory because he hadn't been there long enough, but Andy's got me on that. So Scruggs was there for a cup of coffee. But then we brought in Big Lou Esposito, who looks like he knows his way around a pot pie. So like that's our kind of coach. We're excited about him. So like there's more guys like JB Brown, our special teams coach, couldn't tell you a thing about. So like there's a lot of like TBD. I'll let you know what I think about these guys once I see what they're able to do and once I watch a couple games, but no reason not to be encouraged. And with Sherrone Moore at the helm, I think that's like the guy that's the most important part for us. And then a couple key pieces like Kirk Campbell and Grant Newsome in there. You feel good about it.
Very good. We you guys have already talked about transfer portal and how that has been such really a gift in a sense, in the way that you guys have used it, and it's been weaponized for you all. You guys lose a lot, and you have a lot of high level talent still, but you lose a lot. Who are the guys that we really should look out for as we start looking towards the fall?
You want the high end stars? You want the depth pieces?
The depth pieces. Sorry, we'll talk about high end stars. We'll get to them. Well, I'm not having nightmares of Mason Graham yet. No, not at all. No, yeah, the guys who are replacing the guys that have left.
It's honestly like I want to talk about at least one guy from the portal and then somebody else that's been on the roster for a little bit here. It's honestly like they answered our cries from the last time we were on this podcast, because after the spring game, Jared and I are like, okay, we need some secondary help now, especially after the DJ Waller transfer news came through. But the team really addressed some deficiencies in the portal with a new kicker, 2 wide receivers, and 4 new DBs. And one of these DBs, absolutely, I'm trying to adopt, is FCS All-American corner Amir Hall. Just a complete stud. He's our early prediction to be the starting corner opposite Will Johnson. Just plays with a ferocity and instinct you can't teach. This is his last stop. So after being an All-American at the sub-level, now coming here to try to elevate into the NFL next season. In terms of others to watch out for, I mean, listeners of our pod have heard me just pontificate about this player for ages now. Freshman running back Jordan Marshall. Jordan Marshall is the first Mr. Ohio to come to Michigan since Charles Woodson. He's going to be a true freshman this year, and he is an absolute stud of a running back.
Yeah.
Great ones there. There's a ton here. All right, I'll start with Jayshawn Barham, who's like a little bit more of an obvious one. Transfer from Maryland. They were talking like Heisman buzz. Like the amount that the coaches love this guy is insane. Like I had to sprinkle some settle down juice on them. I'm like, guys, all right, he's an inside linebacker. Like, but they love Jayshawn Barham. And like we're kind of talking depth here. So like the side part of that is like Jayshawn Barham is probably by far the best linebacker. And I don't know what the depth looks like there, but like maybe a guy we haven't talked about. It's as much as everyone knows this Michigan defense, they're talking Will Johnson, Mason Graham. It might be the trio and then Kenneth Grant as well. There might be like a lot of guys there. So he's one. How about the backup tight end? That's Marlon Klein, not Marvin. I've never been able to get it right. Marlon Klein, giant German. This dude just learned football like 6 weeks ago. It's longer than that, but like he just picked it up, has like recently come to the game of football, but he's massive. And Colston Loveland, who's probably the first tight end off the board in the NFL draft next year, I would imagine. Known commodity, definite star for the Wolverines, says that Marlon Klein is the biggest, fastest, strongest on the team. If this dude can catch at all, that's a problem right there. Keep it going. Our secondary running back, Khalil Mullings. If there's one thing that gives Ohio State fans nightmares, a converted linebacker that comes over,
throws a jump pass.
And just throws the jump pass. Already has thrown the jump pass, but like Hassan Haskins was a linebacker that's converted over to running back. And I think you could probably give this guy 77 carries a night and he'd ask for 10 more. He's going to be a part of this offense. I think he's like just a strong downhill runner. I think he'll annoy Ohio State fans like in that game. I'm just going to call that early on because they're probably going to run him a ton of times. Frederick Moore, a deeper wide receiver that I think could really start to elevate. Yeah, there's a lot, like the depth here, and like Andy said, he mentioned Hall. Like we added to it with the transfer portal, so there's a lot of names. I think we love this depth, particularly on the defensive side of the ball and at tight end and maybe running back on the offense.
Yeah. Two thoughts. One, I'm already annoyed by Mullings.
You will be,
but that's I am, not will be. I am. No, I think the real thought though is I think a lot of people look at the number. I think it was 44, right, that you guys lost, and they look at that number and think Michigan is dead in the water. And I think what you guys just did was you said, yeah, no, like
maybe next year, but not this year.
Yeah, well, and I think again the philosophy, the culture, and this is what I took away from our conversation a few months ago. Was I was like, oh man, like, are we staring down the barrel possibly at another top 5 matchup? And if not, top 10, and for opportunities for both teams to be in the playoff, because I think what you guys just did, you just ran down a lot of depth, high level depth that is coming alongside maybe some of the best players at their position in the country. And so you mentioned Colston Loveland, you mentioned Mason Graham. Talk about those guys for a minute. What do they bring, and how do they help you really sustain the early difficulty of the schedule? You guys get Texas early, but how do they help you? And who, for those who don't know, I'm sure most people do, but who are these guys that we're talking about in terms of your high level guys coming back?
So last year, Michigan lost a lot of depth in the 2024 draft class. The 2025 draft class for Michigan actually has a chance to be way more top heavy. It could set a program record for most first round picks. I mean, most estimates are between 3 to 4 players being taken in there as of right now. And those players are Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, defensive tackles, Will Johnson at corner, and Colston Loveland at tight end. 3 of those pieces are on defense. So that really speaks to where the strength of this team is. Like the defense and what they're bringing there is just going to be a formidable force. Although it's their second coordinator. They had Jesse Minter for 2 years. They switched to Wink Martindale, but the scheme is 95% the same. Some calls will change. Some just philosophy things will change. Like Wink Martindale is going to be more aggressive in what he does, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the Don Brown defense. Like we're not just running engage 8 and leaving all our corners out on islands. Like it's going to be mix and match. There's going to be a lot of different elements involved in it. And these players are experienced and they're tough. I think Will Johnson's the best corner at Michigan since Woodson. Mason Graham is probably going to leave Michigan as the best defensive tackle in program history. Kenneth Grant's just last year was his first year starting. Like he had to lose some weight and trim up a little bit. And he's just a freak athlete. You look at him chasing down Singleton in the Penn State game, like that's 340 pounds catching a running back in the open field from behind. That doesn't happen. Yeah. And then on the offensive side of the ball, like Colston Loveland is going to be an ultimate safety blanket for whoever starts at quarterback for Michigan, the top tight end in the country. And I haven't even talked about, you have Donovan Edwards behind him and there to help out as well, who just looked like an animal in the spring game with 10 pounds of muscle. Now, I know a lot of people will point to the offensive line and like have concerns about you don't know the names, but last year was Michigan's worst offensive line in 3 years. That's not really talked about that much. Like they'd taken a step back from 22. Like they're going to find bodies. Giovanni El Hadi, I'm going to go ahead and put that name out here now, is watch out for him to be first team all Big Ten. He's going to be just a complete stud on the left side of the line. And you trust them to fill in because last year they were so deep. And this year they're also very deep. So it might take them some time to gel, like the Texas game early. Like if Michigan's going to trip this season, that seems like the one you'd circle and be like, okay, they don't have the continuity yet. Some things are going to happen, take some time to gel. But like those stars might be able to allow them to weather that storm and at least be in that game, because last time I checked, running the football and great defense is still the best way to win football games consistently.
Yeah.
Well said, sir. Andy should be a prince of at least Dubai, if not all. Like that's how you podcast right there.
There you go.
Yeah, look, I mean, the way I look at it, I think Will Johnson or Mason Graham are better than Jabril Peppers or Rashawn Gary or anybody we've put out in the last decade. Like, I think both of them are. I think Kenneth Grant has a ceiling as high as any of those guys. Colston Loveland is better than Jake Butt, which, like, I'm so sorry, Jake Butt. He comes on our show. He's a friend of the pod. But he's even admitted it. Like, so the high end talent is as high as it's ever been at Michigan. Like, we're talking all time guys. Like, some of the stuff Andy said there's not hyperbole with, like, you're talking the second best since Woodson with Will Johnson. That's very much the case. Donovan Edwards is like a reasonable Heisman bet with how much we're going to run the ball. Alex Orji, if he hits, is the biggest swing player maybe in all of college football. Like, we haven't talked about him much because I think it's pretty obvious Andy and I are like a little bit hesitant, ready to say this is the guy.
Anti-Orgy for years.
We were on your previous podcast. We were kind of, it wasn't anti-Orgy, but we're like, I don't know about this. But if he hits, he's like 6'4.5" and runs like Vince Young and has a cannon for an arm. Like, it's a wild upside prospect for him. So, like, the upside highs of the talent, Giovanni El Hadi, he mentioned Jayshawn Barham. I mentioned, go ahead and count them in as high-level talent. Also, two other guys, Josh Preby and Miles Hinton on the offensive line. I think we're, like, leaning towards them being high level. So, like, as much as we reloaded, it's impossible for us as Michigan, both writers and fans, to overlook this team. There's just way too much talent. Like, it honestly feels like they need to put the right pieces in place because you can't waste this level of talent. It's high level.
Do you think, going back to your comment about Orji, do you think they could do some sort of package? I know they did that last year with him, but do you think there's another quarterback on the roster that they might pair him with if he doesn't maybe progress as much as you'd like in the passing game?
Yeah, that's fascinating. And we've kind of talked about this off air. Generally, I think if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. So I don't love the idea of like planning to run two guys out there and situationally. That makes it so much easier for the defense to scheme against you. But like, if you just went out there and ran the Tim Tebow offense, like verbatim, with Alex Orji, Donovan Edwards, and Khalil Mullings, and how good that defense is, I think that's good enough to win. Like, I don't know how many games exactly, but a lot of your games. But then you do have Jack Tuttle and Davis Warren who can push the ball down the field. I think I'm a little ahead on Jack Tuttle over Davis Warren, but it is the smallest of lines. Like, I think both of these guys are very similar quarterbacks. Could definitely go start for your Indianas or Illinois. Jack Tuttle came over from Indiana and barely got beat out over there. And I think I lean that way because we have Colston Loveland and Marlon Klein and Samaj Morgan and Donovan Edwards, who's an incredible receiver. I think that gives us a little bit more of an edge. So I would lean against what you were suggesting, like packages for each, but you're going to see Alex Orji this year. Guarantee it. Like, lock that in. He's going to play.
Absolutely. I mean, I know we talk about, not wanting to have two quarterbacks in there. Like, they saw some success in 21 because Cade McNamara was limited and they brought in McCarthy for some plays. And I mean, it would get me pretty excited if you put Alex Orji in there, 7 offensive linemen, a couple tight ends and a fullback. And we're like, all right, let's run quarterback power 5 times in a row. I am down. And that's a fun little wrinkle, but no, I'm with Jared. I want someone just a little bit ahead on somebody that can move the ball down the field, because a quarterback for Michigan this year, it's really, you just don't have to lose the game. Like, if you don't lose the game, Michigan will be in every game. Now, they will have to make some plays to win the hard ones against Oregon, against Ohio State, against Texas. But like, by just playing just above board, just not turning the ball over and being the prototypical, the most condescending game manager, like, phrase you want to put on, just being that is good enough to keep you in all these games and just put you in a chance to have a repeat season of last year's success.
Yeah. So instead of 32 runs, it might be 42, maybe even 52.
Cool, you're talking my language. See, I think football went downhill once the forward pass came in.
Yeah,
I think you're on the wavelength. I'm not even kidding. I'm getting more and more on board this idea that, like, Michigan is just never going to pass the ball ever again.
I mean, you talk about Samaj Morgan. I think that's the first time you mentioned him, but get him on the end around with his speed. And of course, Donovan Edwards. It's funny. I just talked with Hooligan, who's a podcaster for Sound the Siren, a Washington podcast. He was mentioning the poor angles that they took on Donovan Edwards. I'm like, he's going to do that to a lot of people. Like, It's not just that Washington took poor angles. It's just that Donovan Edwards is a stud.
He's a lot faster than you think too. Like when he gets out in the open field, it's like, oh God, this isn't like Corum speed. Like there's another gear there.
Yeah. It reminds me of Ezekiel Elliott. We're like, oh no, he's a bowling ball. And it's like, no, that guy's fast too. Good Lord.
I was at the 2015 Michigan Ohio State game. And I was like, Zeke's slow, like last year he put on some weight. He was not slow. He was as he ran down the sideline next to me. I was like, well, there goes that dream.
You always think, oh, they're not that. Oh, they just look slow because they're just really fast.
Right. Yeah. Because we're watching it on a 13-inch in some dingy bar.
Exactly.
There you go. So this is the big question. Can they win a national championship this year?
The short answer is yes. It is possible. Like that's not outside the realm of possibility. And like I am a homer. Obviously, I'm a Michigan fan. I write and podcast for Michigan, but I'm generally like pretty realistic about these sort of things. I thought in 2016 we could. I thought in 2018 we could. I think Andy and I were both really high in the 2018 team and we're wrong about it. But like I was not as high in the 2021 team. I didn't think we could beat Ohio State. So like these things are shifting and like a lot of it is unknown because of the new coaching staff, the new quarterback, but there is a known, and that known commodity is a defense that could maybe be the best to ever play at Michigan. That's not hyperbole. There is a very real chance this is the best defense that's ever set foot at Michigan. And I'm like, I say that as a historian of the game. Like I care about these sort of things, and the 97 defense, I go back and watch those 97 games. This defense is going to be elite. It's going to be elite. You have a responsibility to this program and to this fan base to put out a decent quarterback out there. We don't know what that quarterback is. So like, if you want the side that says we can win it, it's this defense. If you want my biggest concern, it's we still have no idea what to expect at quarterback, but there's also, as we mentioned, just high level pieces at running back, tight end. I think the offensive line, Andy and I are at like, I don't know, what would you say, a 7.5% and 8% or 8 out of 10 confidence, 8 out of 10 confidence. We've really tucked ourselves into the offensive line. There's proof of concept with the coaching staff. Yeah, they could win it. I would say you're the favorites. Georgia's probably favored ahead of us. Texas brings back Quinn Ewers. But then beyond that, like, I would put Michigan right there. Like, I think they should probably be in the top 4 with that defense. That's where I'm at. I think they'll be in the top 4 at the end of the year. I think Michigan, Ohio State's going to be an absolute battle.
So if it were the old way of thinking with like the 4-team playoff, I'd be much more dubious. But the fact that 12 team gets in now, and the fact that a Big Ten or an SEC team could have 3 losses and get in, makes you just super dangerous for a team getting hot at the right time. And the schedule this year is very interesting because Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon all play each other. Yeah. So it's like, it could be like a round robin tournament in a way where every team can have 1 loss and you see what happens there. But no, I'm with Jared. It's all quarterback dependent, but this team could be 9-3 with even below average quarterback play, to be honest. So do that, you can still sneak into the playoff. But if you're getting average or above that, then you can mix it up in those games and the chips will fall as they may. And with the 12-team playoff, you get hot at the end of the year after you work out some personnel issues, get some other guys some reps, then you're going to be dangerous at the right time.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other piece of this, the way that the schedules are, I totally agree with you. I think 9-3, especially with Texas on the schedule.
Yeah, like this is not last yeyear's schedule for Michigan.
No. Yeah. So you've got that premier matchup. So that gives you a little bit of an out with the schedule. But then also there's a real chance that even at 9-3, you could still sneak into the Big Ten championship game because of the way schedules are. You know, we were joking on the College Huddle network. Chips could fall right where you get a Rutgers Iowa Big Ten championship game because their schedules are just awful. But in all seriousness, Michigan could lose 2. Oregon's got a tough schedule. Ohio State, they have to play Michigan, Penn State, Oregon. I think Ohio State has an easier schedule and they still have those 3 games.
Yeah.
And then I think everybody else in the Big Ten has a more of a gauntlet outside of Iowa and Rutgers. And you could see the pathway for Michigan to get in. Oregon trips up against a lower level team away. We joked about Ross Aid, having to go to Purdue, but Purdue, as bad as they can be sometimes, I hate playing at Ross Aid at
I
night.
understand that.
Yeah.
And
no, I get you.
And so I'm not saying that will definitely happen, but there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for Michigan to kind of lay in the weeds a little bit. And even losing those 3 games, you get in the playoff and you get hot. And again, to your point, Andy, if you run the ball and you play good defense, like that travels. And especially at the end of the year, when you might be playing cold weather playoff games, you're playing against teams that have played 14, 15 straight weeks in a row that are tired. The last thing you want is Edwards, Mullings, and I forget the third guy you mentioned Jordan Marshall, only a really, really great freshman running back, just pounding on you, and a defense that has the 2 best defensive tackles in college football. Yeah. I don't want that. Just saying that right now. I don't want to face that in the playoff.
It's a fascinating thing too, because I feel like a lot of people, a lot of pundits are really just penciling in Oregon and not factoring in their travel schedule throughout the year. I know Ohio State has to go there, but Oregon has to come across the country several times. And like a school like Washington, I think 4 of their 5 road games are 1,700 miles or greater away. Yeah. Just like the back and forth of everything they're doing in the scheduling, I think is going to take a toll. Plus, I don't think these Pac-12 teams are just ready for the physicality of the Big Ten. Like we saw that in the national championship.
Yeah, I agree. One of the teams, I just want to get this in there so that I was proven to be right. I think Notre Dame, pencil them in. I'm looking at these schedules, and like Andy said, like the round robin of all these teams that have to play each other, like brutal schedules. Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Washington's tough. Like all these people that have now been added to the Big Ten. I think a team like Notre Dame is going to find themselves in, and like almost you could guarantee them in. Like Georgia seems like a team you can guarantee to get in. And if Michigan beats Texas early on week 2, if like Texas still hasn't figured it out, like something like that could reverberate throughout the rest of the season too. Like Michigan could then drop Ohio State, they could drop Washington or something and still get in. So like it's so much more fascinating. I think that I probably liked the way that it was before, because I'm old, and the old guard is always going to not want to relinquish the old guard. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting with this reshaped division, and like which games are important and which games can you drop, and who actually ends up getting in.
I really, with this format and with the way schedules are, I am leaning more and more to, I think whoever wins the Big Ten has 2 losses.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because I think you could get in with 3. There might be a 4-loss team that gets into the 12 team at some point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially with the way schedules are.
Yeah. With the Big Ten, like, if you're, exactly. Yeah.
It's the only thing I don't like about it is Michigan, Ohio State. The rivalry to me is very sacred. And the fact that Michigan, Ohio State can play 3 times in a year now.
I hate it. I
don't like that.
No, I hate it, because like you could literally throw the first game, win the Big Ten championship, and then win the playoff and be like, yeah, we won the ones that mattered. And it's like, and then that game at home meant nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share this anecdote, and then I want to get to the last question here. In 2022, when you guys beat us and Ohio State goes to the playoff and plays Georgia, up until I think the day before the game, I hated it, because it's like, we didn't beat you guys. And like to get to the playoff, to win what we need to win, we have to go through you, and we didn't. And now, of course, the excitement of the game, like I think, got me out of it. But like I resonate with what you guys are saying, because in a sense, the 12-game playoff, it certainly gives more opportunity. But at the same time, it really does undo some of the sacredness. Because like, why do I hate Michigan? Well, it's because I grew up in the 90s. And like, I swore off Ohio State, Michigan, until Jim Tressel came to town. And I was like, oh, this guy gets the rivalry. And I'm sure it's similar for you guys, where it's like, there's a hatred, like a respectful hatred, where it's like, my mood for a month was determined by who won this game because of all the stakes.
I mean, I love the tradition of you play the last Saturday in November, I mean, predominantly. And then if you lose that game, you have to wait 365-ish days until the next. It sucks. It burns. And like, we had to do that for a decade. And like, now it's like, well, that game didn't matter. It's like, I hate the fact that a Michigan-Ohio State game could theoretically not matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my fandom was forged in the 2006 game, number 1 versus number 2. I was a senior in high school. Like, I mean, growing up in Toledo, we're the most divided place in all of the country. I mean, like nobody disagrees more than the people of Toledo. And the mayor still owes me $1,000, by the way. He bet me on some Connor Stallions banners are coming down stuff. Mayor of Toledo owes me some money, but that's another podcast. But anyway, in like the 2006 year, we thought we were going to get that rematch, if you remember correctly, because it was they were like, man, it is so clearly Michigan, Ohio State, number 1, number 2. If this is a close game, we might get a rematch. And we got a close game. That was an epic game. It was the game of the century, and we thought we might get it. And instead, what we got was Florida, Ohio State, and Florida kind of like ran Ohio State out of the building. It was really weird. So like that made everyone be like, maybe we don't know as much as we think. And like, maybe we need to expand this, which was the better idea. We do need to expand this, but that going into kind of what you guys were saying, like now it's all about like, can you just get into the playoff? Can you sneak your way in? Do teams start to kind of maybe treat it like an NFL schedule? We're just like, we can sit our guys versus Ohio State because we're 11-0. So like we can lose this Ohio State game. I certainly hope it doesn't come to that.
I think if Ryan Day thinks he can sit guys in the Michigan game, we will fire him.
His house would be burned down.
Literally fired, and then also actually fired.
Hard and feathered.
I think the fans, at least our generation of fans, I think will keep the sacredness alive. But as things continue to move in that direction, I think you do lose some of the sacredness of it. So I said I had one more question. You guys brought up Connor Stallions. I do want to get this, and it can be short. There's a lot of thoughts about Stallions away, like in the Big Ten. Obviously, Ohio State fans have their conspiracy theories, their thoughts. Just from your perspective, as you've covered the team, like what's your take from this whole ordeal? And do you guys have any feel for what the NCAA is going to do? And like when they're going to do something?
Yeah, I'll take this one. We're not too worried about it. I'm not going to sit here and lie about it. We don't really even think about it too much anymore. Just the other day, it came out that BJ Johnson, former Texas wide receiver, was brought into Urban Meyer's office and asked, what will it take to get you here? So like, it turns out this whole time, Ohio State wide receivers are like Scrooge McDuck, just swimming in a pool of coins. And we're supposed to worry about Connor Stallions, like over there with his iPhone 14, like trying to be a hero. The whole thing was ridiculous. I never really gave it much credence. Anybody that knows football, including the people that played football that talked about it, the Joel Klatz, Jake Butt, who does the show with Jake Butt on ESPN, the former Ohio State linebacker, Andy.
Is it Bobby Galloway?
Is it Galloway or is it Carpenter? It's a Bobby Carpenter.
You know better than me, Zach.
Carpenter. Yeah. I don't know. But like anybody that played football was like, there's a lot of times they have your signs. Like, and then you just got to deal with that. Like it happens, of course, like somebody's going to go there and like be like, oh, I see what they're doing here. It's going to happen that people are going to get your signs. When Connor Stallions left, like when he was dismissed from the team, we went on to go against Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama, Washington to win a national championship. And since then, they have passed laws that are going to allow helmets to have speakers in them because they realize this is absurd. So I don't think it's any more absurd than the Scrooge McDuck dollars going to Ohio State players. I don't think it meant any more to the wins than doing honest to God scouting. I don't think it means that much. It's annoying, and we all like to think that our team runs an extremely clean program. And of course, I would love it if this never happened. But it doesn't have any say. It doesn't hold any weight over our national championship or the way we view our national championship.
No, that was very well said. The thing about it was, I mean, from the beginning, reporting about it was very inaccurate and very just irresponsible at times. My favorite was the story about how Jim Harbaugh was not going to be able to seek safe harbor in the NFL. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? It doesn't mean anything. Like, a lot of it was silly. And honestly, the biggest punishment that came down for this is everybody else. Nobody wanted helmet communication. That's what you're supposed to say, but no one wants it because everybody steals signs. Like, not everybody advanced scouts, but Joel Klatt talked about this ad nauseum about everybody steals signs. Nobody in their right mind wanted this. And now that advantage is gone. And as far as the NCAA is concerned, like, they've been hemorrhaging control over football for several years and isn't going to have any authority over football and the inevitable super conferences in the next couple of years when the Big Ten and SEC just run everything. I mean, maybe they bring the proverbial hammer down as a death rattle as they just cling to existence, or I mean, at the rate they're losing lawsuits, maybe they just hand down the slap on the wrist because that's all they have left in their power. Like, to quote John U. Bacon, nobody knows anything and hasn't this entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a $2.75 billion lawsuit that they're on the wrong end of. I think they got bigger issues to fry than Jim Harbaugh, who's no longer in NCAA football.
Honestly, it adds to the Sherrone Moore lore. If Michigan loses to Ohio State last season, all of that sign stealing stuff is full tilt right now, still going on.
Yep.
Like, just like you can't do it without it. You had to do the sign stealing. That was the most important win of this century because it validated the 2 wins prior, and then it set up the Rose Bowl and that. So Sherrone Moore isn't leading that team to victory against Ohio State in that game. Everything is completely different right now for Michigan fans, myself included.
Yeah.
You've convinced me.
Yeah, that's a good, and I remember us talking about that before and after. We're like, all right, if the sign stealing is a thing, we should win this game. And as soon as we didn't, we're like, yeah, like, I think we have to take the loss and realize, yeah, no, Michigan's just whooped us 3 years in a row. And then like Alabama, Washington, like, they were the 2 other best teams in college football this year, and they beat them. And honestly, Michigan should have beat Alabama by more, but they.
Oh yeah, the team played. I mean, that game is like a movie to watch. It's fun knowing the outcome, but during it about killed us with the muffed punts and everything else going on, the backward passes. I mean, my favorite movie to watch now. Don't get me wrong, but man, that game took years off my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually only 16, but I've aged horribly.
Yeah. Next year, heart attack during one of the games. That's. No, hopefully not.
Oh, no, I've seen Jared almost die. 2022, Michigan, Ohio State. We're together at his house watching the game. And that first quarter of the game, I mean, we're already just like, okay, we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there. And then there's like a muffed like putt or something for a second. Jared like falls down to all fours and is yelling. And then on the first Cornelius Johnson touchdown, Jared falls to the floor grasping at his chest. And I'm like, is that it? Is that the big one?
Oh my gosh. That's how
I'll go eventually, but that wasn't my day, boys. Wasn't my day.
You're still here. That's a good thing.
I'm still here, but yeah, no, that almost killed me. 2016 was the same thing. Good Lord, I almost died in 2016. That's how it goes. A bunch of people chipped in to get me tickets to that game for my 30th birthday. And I was just like, I can't believe, that this is how I'm celebrating my 30th birthday, is this loss that's coming. And then, the missed field goals and everything. And I know that is a game of angst for both sides. I was grateful at the end, but I know you guys have other thoughts about that, which we can divert to. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move on. I'm at a point in my life where I'm healthy. I'm emotionally stable. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, I accepted the whole JT was short, scenario a long time ago. I was honestly more pissed about the third down preceding that play anyway, when we let Curtis Samuel run back and forth from sideline to sideline and pick up 10 yards and set up a 4th and short to begin with. But
I almost had a heart attack during that play. That was just like, What are you doing? Oh, okay. Okay, great. All right.
Nothing better than watching Wilton Spate drop back to pass and be like, look, a wide open Malik Hooker. I'm going to throw it to him now.
That's yeah. Yeah. Let's get to something we all three of us can really enjoy, which is food. So I've been asking different people if we're going to travel to Ann Arbor this year, if we're going to enjoy some of the local cuisine, the local fare, where do you go? What do you get?
Yeah, I'll take that. Brunch, I would go Frita Patitas. I like a little Latin spice. I've spent the last couple years living in South America, and they can do it admirably well. I wouldn't say it's quite the same. So I'd go Frita Patitas. Zingerman's Deli is gonna be like the big one. Everyone's gonna mention that. That's really good, but it's like a pain. You gotta wait in a long line. So I might go Mr. Spots. Mr. Spots is my go-to every single time. I get some wings. I get a Philly cheesesteak. That's a great game day experience. So if you're getting brunch, Frita Patitas, I would go get something with any type of Latin flair there. But if you're there for a game day, it's Mr. Spots. It's always been Mr. Spots.
Okay.
Oh, for me, we're going to go, Jared's been there with me. We're going to go 10 miles south of Ann Arbor to Saline, Michigan. And we're going to go to Salt Springs Brewery. It's in an old refurbished church, and it's got beautiful stained glass windows, and they have a full menu as well as like a full selection of great beers there. And then you're just like a little short, like hop, skip, and a jump to the big house. One of my favorite. It's a must stop every time I go.
You said Salt Springs?
Salt Springs Brewery in Saline, Michigan.
Oh my god.
That's a really good one. I like that you went like with that one too, because that's like our little hidden gem. But yeah. Blow it up because it should have a lot of business. It's awesome.
Yes.
I love finding like both the hot spots, but also like the hidden gems. Cause I feel like
that's the hidden gem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jared found this one time and we went there and was like, this place rules. And you're like so close to Ann Arbor too. Like it's so easy to get there from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so fun. Very cool. All right. So let me get you out on this. When do you guys drop podcasts? Where can we find you again, just to make sure that everybody knows where you guys are?
Yeah, so our podcasts are generally dropping Thursday mornings. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music. Just search Maize and Brew. Out of the Blue is probably the easiest way. Out of the Blue will get you several songs from the 1960s and 50s, which are wonderful, done by some tremendous artists. But you're looking for Out of the Blue in podcasts. We'll be doing a lot more YouTube this year, so you can find us on YouTube. Look Out of the Blue. That's the name of the podcast. Andy is always writing on maizenbrew.com. He's a tremendous writer. My fingers stopped working 2-3 years ago. I don't really contribute much anymore. I do kind of long form, long idea podcasts that
Jared doesn't contribute
writing
until he writes like a 6-part series about offensive linemen being selected and hand placement. So don't let him fool you. When he gets the urge, yeah. Scrolls are written from this man.
Yeah. I'm like the Spotlight department from the movie Spotlight. We pick our own projects and we take our time.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. But yeah, we would love it, man. And we really appreciate you having us on and like talking Big Ten at large. We certainly do talk Big Ten at large on our podcast. It's primarily Michigan focused, but we dive into movies, television, Big Ten, just general sports ideas. Like we're all over the map. I think, yeah, we're always welcoming new listeners.
Very cool. And soon a 25th anniversary recap of The Mummy, because it is 25 years.
Oh my sweet God.
Zach, we might have you on for a special.
You might be on. You might be on the Mummy pod. Let's go.
That's fantastic.
I'm in. Let's do it. Cool. Well, guys, thanks so much for being on here, for dropping some wisdom on our listeners. And for the rest of you guys listening, just thanks so much for listening. Andy, Jared, hope to have you guys back at some point. Hopefully we'll collaborate on that 25-year anniversary of The Mummy. And other than that, Andy, congrats. Getting married next month.
Yes. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, we'll come back anytime. Excited to get married. Excited to have my best friend Jay Storm. He also goes by the J Man. Just call him that in public at all times.
No.
Have Jared officiate the wedding for us. And yeah, man, love to be here. Love to have you on our pod sometimes, and go Blue.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach. Go Blue.
Yep. Take care, guys. For the rest of you, take care. God bless.